however, who I've got with me now on this Grati-Tuesday, it's Reverend Sophie. Morning.
Morning. Do you know, I was just thinking, once I finish with you today, I'm about to take my daughter and her boyfriend to Folly Farm because they won 2 free tickets. So they're off to Folly Farm this morning, which is very exciting. So I just thought I'd mention that.
I'm going to give them one of these, were they? Oh, they're going to have a great time. Come rain or shine, there's stuff to do at Folly Farm. So have a wonderful day.
I'm sure they will.
Reverend Sophie, it feels like an absolute age since we've last talked to each other because there was that little itty bitty thing in the religious calendar called Easter. They're taking up just a little thing. I imagine that you've been quite busy over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think people think that Christmas is the big thing, but actually for Christians who go to church regularly, Easter is the big thing. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning in Grati-Tuesday. But yes, it's been a busy few weeks, and it's been very exciting few weeks as well. I've had a wedding. We had a chrism mass at the cathedral, which is where all the holy oils are blessed by the bishop, and we renew our ordination vows. So we get to spend some time just being with God and being with our colleagues and just renewing those vows that we made. So that was really exciting. What else was there going on? Oh, there was all sorts of things going on, but the wedding was exciting too.
We love a wedding. What was the weather like for the wedding?
It was miserable, absolutely miserable. Do you know what? It held off long enough. It was just really blowy, similar to how it is today, actually. Just really blowy, and so it was quite difficult to get. Like when they were throwing the confetti and stuff, the confetti was gone before the photographer had a chance, that sort of thing. But it was a really beautiful wedding. And just full of joy.
And that's all they need to be, aren't they? Like there's a lot of expectation put on weddings, but actually the reason why you're doing it and the outcome is actually something that's quite cut and dry. You don't need all the paraphernalia around it.
No, you don't. It's all about the two people that are committing to each other, and actually the two families as well. It's not just about the two people that are being married. It's about the two families coming together, which of course is really beautiful, and I just love that. I think the idea of bringing families together. I was talking about it to my daughter yesterday. One of my daughters gets can get quite upset about friendships and things. You know what girls are like, nightmare. And I said to her, actually, the most important people in your life are your family, and they will always love you no matter what. So, and actually, there's something really nice about finding a partner that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and then drawing those two families together so that you've got two families that you can rely on for the rest of your life, which I think is really lovely.
I love that.
Yeah. It's really nice.
You mentioned about the weather there being all blowy and that it's not always perfect, and there's a few road closures going on with a lot of flooding going on this morning. And you just mentioned actually before Billie Jean that what you're going to tell us about your perspective for Grati-Tuesday this morning is about holidays.
Well, it's about the weather.
It's about the weather.
About the weather. So. But I mean, holidays come into it as well. So I was thinking about the weather this morning, and I have done nothing but moan about the rain for the last, I don't know how long. I've had enough of rain. And I think actually, and that's why holidays came into it, because it was like, I can't wait to go away. I'm going away in August. But then this morning I was thinking about what we might talk about this morning. I was thinking to myself, do you know what? If we didn't have the rain, if we didn't have the miserable weather, if we didn't have the storms, if we didn't have all of the nastiness that comes with that cold weather, what would we look forward to? If we didn't have all of those cold nights in front of a fire, what would we look forward to in terms of the sunshine in the summer? Where would our hope be? And I think that's actually something really, really important to remember, particularly as we're in this Easter season. If there was no Good Friday, there would be no Easter Sunday where we celebrate the risen Christ. If there is no, often people say to me, how can you believe in a God that lets suffering happen? And that's a really hard question, and one that I'm not going to try and completely unpack here on the show. But actually, there is something to be said. God never promised us that there would be no suffering. He never said in the scriptures that there would be no suffering. He came to be with us in the form of his son, Jesus Christ, in order to understand that suffering and be able to walk that with us. So he never said there would be no suffering, but what he did say is that he would be there with us, walking that journey with us. And that's what Good Friday and Easter is about. It's that recognizing that there is stuff going on that is really awful and a nightmare for many of us, and none of us are untouched. Often people think, or you might, because I'm a priest, I'm not touched by these things. Of course, we're all touched. Every human being on this planet is touched by suffering in some way, shape, or form. Some people suffer far worse than others. But what I can be sure of is that eventually there will be an Easter day when we're looking forward to that hope and then the ascension, which is another thing entirely. But we're looking forward to that hope and that time where the sun rises and the rain is gone.
Yeah, there is something about embracing that adversity that we might find ourselves in, and yes, foul weather for a long period of times is a type of adversity, and we're thinking, gosh, when will this ever change? And then when it does change, that's when you get that moment of, it
Yeah.
has changed, and you get that relief, and that can be carried over to lots of circumstances that we find ourselves in, embracing that adversity and finding out that actually the wind and the rain and the water, as much as it's not good for transport, is good for some crops. With the road closures that we've got, it's good for ecosystems, to have a good old washout. And I remember a couple of years ago, some friends were visiting from where was it? I think it might have been California, and you think, they're living that Hollywood lifestyle and everything's fine because it's always sunny. And they came over and they're like, you guys actually have weather. You have hot days. You have cold days. We've just kind of got this constant blanket, and you kind of forget then what it feels like to be washed with rain and feel that freshness that comes with that. And that we're actually quite fortunate to live on this little island where we get a bit of everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right. And we often look at other places and think the grass is always greener, but and that's the thing. We've got to be grateful for what we've got and focus. So yes, I have been moaning lots about the rain. But then I was thinking about it this morning. I was thinking, actually, let's just be grateful for the rain.
Yes.
Even though it's been a nightmare, let's just be grateful for the rain, and for that, that messiness of life sometimes.
Yeah, we do forget we are actually waterproof. It's just
We are.
inconvenient. Reverend Sophie, thank you so much for joining us. I just mentioned Hollywood there as well, and very quickly, you mentioned that you're actually in part studying Hollywood.
I am. So I'm doing a master's degree in theology, imagination, and culture. So it's kind of looking at that interface between theology and culture and all things cultural, and how we use our imagination then to interpret theology and culture. And one of the questions that's coming up is using a feminist biblical hermeneutic, analyze the Barbie film as a retelling of the Garden of Eden story from Genesis 2-3. So there's this kind of like, I'm really excited about, I've watched Barbie once. Have you seen Barbie? You've seen Barbie, haven't you?
I've seen Barbie in the last week or two.
And to be able to look at that and Genesis 2 and 3 and go, okay, what have the makers of that film, what have they done? What have they taken, whether deliberately or by accident? I often wonder about what's going on in filmmakers' minds. Do they deliberately look at the Bible, or is it by accident that they draw out biblical themes? And I do wonder. and we were talking about musicians, weren't we? There are an awful lot of bands that have got Christian references, and some of them are accidental, and some of them are very deliberate because they have a faith, but you wouldn't necessarily know it. So I can't remember the name of the band that you mentioned before, but I know
the Killers.
the Killers. There we are. There we are. Mr. Brightside. So yeah, the Christian references or religious references that are in our society all the time. And I often giggle to myself when people say they don't do religion, and I'm like, bet you do. Bet you do, even if you don't know it. But so I do sort of giggle to myself and think, actually, we do, as a society, we're doing religion all the time, but we just don't know it. And I personally would rather know what I'm doing in terms of my religion. I'd rather know what it is that I'm following and who I'm following, without blindly following something.
Reverend Sophie, thank you so much. Back on Alive and Kicking this Sunday?
Yes, back on Alive and Kicking this Sunday. We haven't recorded it yet.
Nope.
So I have no idea what we're talking about. So
but it'll be on Sunday morning from 8 a.m. You might have noticed me, actually, you were talking about Barbie there. So I was like, oh, quick, I'll put a Barbie song in. And do you know, there was already one in there.
Was there really?
Yeah, I didn't even put it in before. So yeah, you'll see here, I've got two things.
I'm just Ken, or whatever it's called, because I've been singing that going around in my head for weeks now.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put that one on for you then. It wasn't that one that was in the log, but I am going to find it for you. Reverend Sophie, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great to have you back on the Gina and Tom Breakfast Show with Folly Farm, and I hope that your daughter has a great time there as well. We've got I'm Just Ken from the Barbie movie on the way. Ryan Gosling, Noah and the Whale, Life Goes On, and Noah and the Whale.
I know, no religious references at all on it.
And then Dan Hartman, Relight My Fire. That may be a bit of a stretch.
I don't know. You think about Pentecost. What was Pentecost all about? Pentecost was about the Holy Spirit coming down and fire being. So, I mean, I don't think there was actually fire on the heads of the apostles, but I think actually there was a burning fire inside of those of us who have faith, and that's what pushes us to go forward and tell other people about our faith.
Oh, there you go. Right. We've got those tracks on the way for you. And Maria Sky with the last word. The grass is definitely greener here in Wales. Thank you very much. It's been Grati-Tuesday with Reverend Sophie. We'll get your handpick what's ons with the Great Wedlock Farm and Deer Park on the way. It's not long gone, 20 minutes past 9 o'clock.
Folly Farm, sponsors of the breakfast.